It is not common that future Hall of Fame players become available when they seemingly still have some gas left in the tank. While apparently that's what's going on with five-time All-Pro wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins, who seems to be heading towards an inevitable breakup with the Arizona Cardinals. And in this video, I'm going to give you all the good, the bad, and my overall conclusion on whether or not I think my Carolina Panthers should pull the trigger and bring this future Hall of Famer to Carolina. And we're going to get into that right after this.
From the foe, you dig?
Welcome to The Way I See It with Jamario Rashad. This is a Carolina Panthers fan channel. Please do me a favor by hitting the like button, and please make sure you subscribe as I am on my road to 2K. And I need to pause right there and go ahead and say thank you to all of my subscribers that have supported me in my journey so far. Upon launching my last video prior to this, I did hit 1,000 subscribers, and that $100 giveaway will be announced very soon. But I did have to take this time to say thank you to the rest of to all of you all that have supported me. Now let's go ahead and get into DeAndre Hopkins. We first have to start with what would be the positives of this potential trade. Now, the first thing I have to highlight is DeAndre Hopkins is still currently, to this day, a top 10 wide receiver in the entire world. There are not 10 guys walking this earth that play the wide receiver position better than DeAndre Hopkins. He is in 10 years in the NFL, as I mentioned in my intro, he is a five-time All-Pro as well as a five-time Pro Bowler. Now, speaking to his most recent year in 2022, while missing a total of 8 games, DeAndre Hopkins had 64 catches, 717 yards, and 3 touchdowns. For comparison's sake, our very own star wide receiver, DJ Moore, had only 62 catches, 888 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Now, although DeAndre Hopkins missed almost half of the season, he was almost as productive in terms of output. He was almost as productive in terms of output as DJ Moore when you look at the stats. If he were to have played the entire 17-game season, he would have blown DJ Moore's stats out of the water, especially when it comes to yardage. He may have almost doubled him up. That just shows how dominant this guy still is at this point in his career. Now, what exactly would it take for us to bring DeAndre Hopkins to the Carolina Panthers? Now, in an article that I'm going to be referencing throughout this video, written by Sports Illustrated Albert Breer, titled "The Cardinals May Have Trouble Trading DeAndre Hopkins," he seems to indicate that his sources think that a second-round pick is pretty much all that it would cost for a team to reach out and trade for DeAndre Hopkins. Now, in doing that, that still allows us to go out and pick our rookie QB if one was to fall to us at that 9th pick. If we did not have to create a trade package and this pick was needed to actually move up in the draft, and we could stand pat right here, trading Christian McCaffrey and actually bringing back those 2 second-round picks could be very useful in this situation. Even if we were able to package a second-round pick from a later draft, and we were actually able to keep our second-round pick, package that, and move up if necessary to draft a QB, all of that would only work in a perfect world. But potentially only having to give up a second-round pick would set us up to be able to make those power moves and bring DeAndre Hopkins here without hindering anything that we could potentially do in this upcoming draft. But that is wishful thinking. More than likely, the Arizona Cardinals would want a second-round pick in this upcoming draft, man. But also, the final thing I want to talk about in terms of a positive when bringing DeAndre Hopkins back to Carolina is the fact that he would be what we deem a local guy. Although he is not like a Charlotte person where the team's plays and is located, we have to remember that we are the Carolina Panthers. A lot of this fan base is in South Carolina, and he himself is from Central South Carolina, and he played his college ball at the SEC powerhouse that is Clemson. So he is a local guy with local ties, and reaching out and bringing DeAndre Hopkins to Carolina would continue on with this offseason narrative that we have started to push with bringing in Frank Reich, who was our first QB, bringing back Dom Capers, who was our very first coach, bringing back McCown as a former QB, so on and so forth. This would just be yet another person to add to that long-standing narrative that we have been sowing throughout the offseason. And DeAndre Hopkins, I don't know what goes through his mind and or how much he values that, but that would be a great story and potentially something that would be in our favor towards bringing DeAndre Hopkins to Carolina, man. So now we must inevitably move on to the negatives. Now, what is the bad or the potential negatives in this trade? Now, first of all, currently as it stands, DeAndre Hopkins' current contract has a no trade clause, as well as a something in there that says that he is not able to be franchise tagged at the end of his contract. So what exactly does that mean? That means that DeAndre Hopkins would be able to handpick the team that he wanted to go to, which, if I'm him, would preferably be a contender, as he is moving into the second decade of his career. He is not going to be able to keep putting up this output much longer. So I know he wants to go out and chase a ring. So pushing to move to a contender would probably be his preference. But even beyond him wanting to go to a contender, he does not currently have any guaranteed money left on his current contract. So wherever he goes, before he goes there, I'm pretty sure he and his agent are going to negotiate an extension on his contract to make sure that he has some type of security over these next few years. And I don't necessarily feel very comfortable with the expectations of what I think a guy of DeAndre Hopkins caliber demanding from a team. I don't think, one, that he would be interested in coming to Carolina, as I mentioned, but two, I don't think the Carolina Panthers would be interested in paying him the exorbitant amount of money that he would probably want, coming off of, like, although an injured year, he was an All-Pro just 2 seasons ago. So I'm pretty sure he would be able to parlay himself into some pretty decent money that I don't think the Carolina Panthers would feel comfortable giving him. Now, the next thing I want to focus on is his age. Now, as I mentioned, he has missed a few games over the past couple of years. But to give you all a little more context on that, in that article that I've referenced from Albert Breer, he talked about the fact that DeAndre Hopkins will be 31 years old when the season starts, and this is in fact the quote that I got from that. He'll be 31. He'll be 31 years old on opening day. On the surface, that does not disqualify him as a receiver, but that's how old AJ Green was when he went to Cincinnati. Went from Cincinnati to Arizona, and he had just 78 catches for 1,084 yards and 5 touchdowns in 31 games since. And Julio Jones was 31 for his last year in Atlanta, which is when the injury started to take a toll on his production, and he has had just 106 catches over the last 3 years, including that one. Now, although Nuke has not fallen off a cliff as we've seen in these past few years, he has started to catch the injury bug, as he was much more of an Iron Man during the earlier parts of his career. Now, over the last 2 years, he has missed 15 games. That is nearly an entire season for a variety of reasons. But what is more damning about that is, to begin the 2022 campaign, he actually missed the first 6 games, not due to injury, but due to a suspension for PEDs, for performance enhancing drugs, which just shows that although this may be a common occurrence throughout the NFL, or it may not be, I'm not very entrenched in that type of knowledge in terms of what they do in the locker room. Him needing to have these extra supplements, even to the extent of them being illegal, to keep his body up and moving to be able to put out the type of production that he normally does speak to him potentially falling off in these latter years in his career and going out trading draft capital and possibly having to extend money and cap space to a guy that may be falling off a cliff very soon would be very, very dangerous. And I don't know how smart of a move that would be, man. So, in conclusion, do I think that we should make this move and go out and go out and trade for DeAndre Hopkins, man? I am going to have to say no. I do not think that we should do that, man. As I mentioned, they expect, or it is expected, that the Arizona Cardinals would demand at least a second round pick and preferably one in this draft if I were them. That is speculation on my part. But with that being the case, I believe that we have more positions of need on this team that outweigh that of the wide receiver that we could potentially get in the second round that would be much more useful for this team over the next 5 years to a decade. So using that pick on a wide receiver, when even if we did not pick a different position, we could just pick a wide receiver in the second round, does seem like it's taking an unnecessary gamble on a guy who would potentially be moving into the last stages of his career. Also, as I mentioned, I would not feel comfortable giving this guy money, allocating cap space, doing all of this. As I mentioned, he has a no trade clause, and before he even stepped foot in the door, he would demand new money. So giving up the combination of the draft and the money, I don't think it's necessarily worth it for DeAndre Hopkins at this particular stage in his career. And the last thing I want to end off on is one final quote from that article that I mentioned in Sports Illustrated. This last quote was, the injury issue also has limited Hopkins severely when it comes to his ability to practice during the week. That to me is an immediate deal breaker, knowing that we are a team that is going to have a young QB that is going to need to build chemistry and camaraderie with the wide receiver room in order to build his confidence to actually execute and perform week to week. Having a guy that he isn't going to actually be able to practice with is not suitable, and is not needed whatsoever. So if his injury concerns are so much so that he isn't even going to be able to show up on the days throughout the week that he needs to just practice and build the chemistry with our young guy, that is a too big of a red flag for me, and I will have to say that I am out on DeAndre Hopkins, man. But what do you all think about this potential move for the Carolina Panthers? Do you think we should bring DeAndre Hopkins in for a second round pick, potentially have to pay him more money, but we are drafting a QB, and having a future Hall of Famer could be better, but I think there are cheaper options. What do you all think about this topic? Just go ahead and leave your comments down in the comment section. Remember to like the video. From the bottom of my heart, I truly appreciate each and every one of you all that has already subscribed to this channel for me. This is going to be a new part of my life. I worked very hard to get here, and you all just supporting me has helped me tremendously, and I will never ever forget it. So thank you all so much, man. And with that being said, I am Jamario Rashad. This is the way I see it, and I'm out. Peace.